Hello and welcome to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. Once again, unfortunately, scheduling issues came about. This time it was nobody's fault. It was totally uncontrollable, but end results the same. Paul is not here for one more week. Hopefully, he will be back again soon, but unfortunately, just circumstances of life. In his place, I have a very good friend of mine, Anna Vigue. She is an administrator of the Classic Gamers Guild Facebook group and a lifelong gamer. So, welcome to the show, Anna Vigue. Did I pronounce your name properly this time?
Thanks a lot. You got my name right, so
I usually screw up. I usually screw up one part of it at least. I don't know what it is because I know what your name is, but then I just can't ever say it properly. It's not like it's ever complicated either. I'll screw something up. I have to admit, it's harder for me to start this episode because normally I just trash talk Paul for a while, and I can't bring myself to do that to you.
oh man, then you should play Mad Libs more with me, I guess, and we'll learn to trash talk each other. We got to get in on that beer club.
Primarily, you are a lifelong gamer, and for pretty much the duration of that time, I believe you were a big fan of Leisure Suit Larry, which is a game that we have not really had a chance to talk about very much on the show. I myself am only kind of familiar with a couple of the games, so I wanted to bring an expert on here to guide me through it.
Well, you can't talk about Leisure Suit Larry without talking about Donald Duck's Playground. That's uh, that's where my original allocation came from.
Oh, right. I forget that he worked on that. So you played that first?
I did that. I had a few years of getting into math and throwing fruit,
Were you
counting my nickels.
counting your what?
Counting my nickels. I mean, there was
Oh,
a nickel
nickels.
store. It
Okay,
starts as a
sorry.
penny store, but as you get better, it progresses into a higher denomination. So
Okay, I didn't hear you say nickels. It's an Al Low game, so I kind of assumed you said something else. Um,
you
so
brought me up right from the beginning. Oh my.
so is this how it started? You were kind of like you played Donald Duck's Playground, and then you're like, hey, I like this Al Low guy. What's another game he did? And then you're like, hey, this is probably along the same lines.
My whole history is super random. My dad would just bring home games, and I didn't really have any say on it one way or the other. And they'd be traded usually at a used game shop, or he'd go to Tesseract, or he'd go to Radio Shack. We Victoria was a hotbed of PC games in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and I didn't even have to do the work.
Mm-hmm. And this is
So
for the benefit of the listeners, this is Victoria, British Columbia.
that's right over on the West Coast, the capital of British Columbia. Not
That's
that
correct.
anybody would know that.
No, it's uh, just like everyone thinks Toronto is the capital of Canada. Um, Vancouver is not the capital of BC. Um, so specifically, Leisure Suit Larry, did you start with the first game? How old were you when you first played this? In fact.
It was about 2 months after my ninth birthday, and my dad came home with it in a box. So I kind of had an idea what to expect
Do you still have that
right
box
from the I do still have the box, just of that one. Very few, but I've kept some.
with the cocktail
And
napkin? This is a very important piece of computer game history here.
no, I don't have the. I actually only have a slip cover.
Ah.
It hurts, I know. But yeah, he presented me with this game, and he said, "Here, you can play it," as he did with most of the games he gave to me. And so I got it and I installed it, and it presented me with these questions. And instantly, because you know what, Rick, when you're 9 years old, you're really smart. I said, "This is just another puzzle," because I'd already played King's Quest 4 by now. I knew what was up. So I wrote down the question and I wrote down the answers, and if I got it wrong, I'd cross it out, and if I got it right, I'd just circle it, and eventually you have a little guide. It's another part of the game, right?
Yes, that's right. It's it's not an age test. It's are you smart enough to have gotten past it?
Yeah, are you bored? Is this the only game you're playing right now? And are you super intrigued by that box? Go.
Now, you're from a gaming family. At least your dad, your mom too.
She was a computer graphics artist and she plays free cell like a boss. I would call that a gamer.
Okay. Hey, it's fine. There's no gatekeeping here. If you can play a game awesomely, then you're a gamer, or at all, then you're a gamer. But I'm just curious. It's like,
That's what I love about you guys.
so I guess I guess where I'm going with this is, did you play it as a family, Leisure Suit Larry, when you were 9 years old?
My dad would come up and see what was up and he'd make jokes. He'd say, "Has a dog peed on your leg lately?"
But he did he play it before you did, at least, or did
No,
he know?
he'd watch. We'd play it together. He'd watch it over my shoulder, but he never got. He never. I don't think he ever completed a single Sierra game at any time. He was just interested because I was interested.
Ah, that's great. I mean, I totally came from a family where my parents had nothing but utter contempt for video games. So this is the kind of
Oh
stuff I need to
no.
live vicariously through you and others.
I'll give you the love. Yeah, my dad was he played nothing but shooters. As soon as Half-Life came out, he's like, "This is a whole new world." Because, we were into Blake Stone and Duke Nukem, and this sort of thing was really blowing him away. And then as they'd get into Call of Duty and more of the war games where you could do strategy stuff, he was just, oh, he had so much fun with it. But now, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, every day, all day, if he's not reading a book.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the kind of retirement I want.
Totally.
And no, and it's great because I know you take care of him. I know that you play games with him, so that's really cool. That's sort of come full circle like that, or is that a semicircle? I'm not sure exactly how circles work apparently. Um, but so it's yeah, so gaming family. So this would have been like the late 80s, early 90s, probably mid to late 80s around this time, especially when Leisure Suit Larry came out. So very, very different time back then compared to what it is now. What was it like in basically the heat of the 80s and being especially a young impressionable gamer? What was it like playing Leisure Suit Larry at this particular time, at that particular time of your life?
Oh, it fed into the part of my brain that was just aching to be fed. It was funny and it was raunchy. I mean, I was playing Space Quest 4 at the same
Hmm.
time, and those two games bounced off of each other. And then once I started seeing in jokes as I got further into series. I mean, you want to find them all.
Yes, that's
Uh,
right.
so yeah, it was good to learn to wear a condom
At 9, yeah.
at any age. I mean, you need to know to be safe, and if you don't put your pants back on, you're gonna get in trouble.
It's definitely something you should know before it becomes important.
It's true. It's probably saved some teenage pregnancies happening right there with this
Leisure
game.
Suit Larry save the it
Yeah.
it saved about as many as it caused.
What better anti-hero, right? That white polyester suit. I mean, you imagine him. He thinks women's lib is a strip joint in East Fresno. He doesn't even know what he wants.
Leisure Suit Larry 1 is like one of the only Leisure Suit Larry games I played. I played 1 and I played 3, and even then I only played like once a piece. I played Leisure Suit Larry 1 quite recently, like probably a couple of years ago. Um, or maybe just like a little bit more than a couple of years ago. And I was surprised how much I liked it. Like I kind of grew up. I missed out on Leisure Suit Larry because I didn't really think that I was going to enjoy that kind of humor. Because I wasn't really sort of the guy who. Well, for the benefit of the listeners, what just happened was there was a little bit of a connection error, so we accidentally dropped the recording while I was mid sentence, and I totally forgot what I was saying. So we're back now, obviously, and I'm gonna just move on to the next thing. I'm sorry, I totally don't know what I was talking about at the time that we.
Well, just to pick up on it, you were talking about uh, I was going to comment and say you weren't sure that you'd be interested in Leisure Suit Larry. And for
Yes.
me, because I didn't have a choice, they were brought to me. It actually removed that element altogether. So I'm like, let's learn more about, oh, sex. Okay. Because number one was a lot raunchier than number two. And then people complained that number one was too raunchy and number two wasn't raunchy enough.
Enough,
And then
right.
number three, they kind of went back in the raunchy direction a little bit again.
Right, right. Um,
Hmm.
okay, so wow, you actually remembered what I was saying better than I did. Good job. That's why I have you here. You're the one who knows things. That's a little inside joke amongst administrators of the Classic Gamers Guild. Anna is actually my source of information. Um, so yeah, so I was actually really surprised at how much I really liked Leisure Suit Larry 1. It was raunchy, but I didn't think it was like it was a raunchy topic more so than it was actually that raunchy. Like it kind of was. It was. It's hard to really describe it. It wasn't as raunchy as I was expecting, even though it is obviously pretty raunchy. But that is the most I have ever used the word raunchy in such a short period of time.
Well, and they didn't write all of it, of course. I mean, going from soft porn, they kept the girls, the three girls, and they kind of kept the gist, but they switched up the text and they kept the environments, but it's the same different game. But the fact that they were able to build on soft porn, I think really upped the level of what Leisure Suit Larry became as a graphic game.
Right. Okay, so you actually played soft porn adventure then.
Not till I was an adult, but I was shocked at how similar it was and then how distinctly different it became as you played through it.
Oh, okay. So is so do they keep the names of the characters the same? Like is it still Fawn and Eve and Faith and I can't remember who else is in there. But was it all the
Yeah,
same?
they kept the names that were there. There were a lot of names that weren't. For example, Larry, it was you, kind of like the hero. It was a
Oh,
generic
okay.
person. And then they created a character. They're like, well, who is this guy? Well, this guy lives with his mom. How old is he? He's like, well, he's 38 years old. And what does he do? He's like the quintessential nerd, but he doesn't want to be, and he's getting cravings to be somebody who he isn't yet, and he wants to branch out and find out how to be that person.
I just like the focus of that first game. Like there was you get a game like Police Quest where you just sort of you start out just doing the beat and then eventually a story comes along. Space Quest, you just kind of have to survive the first little bit and eventually you figure out what you have to do. Leisure Suit Larry, especially for the AGI era of games, I guess that and King's Quest are the ones where they actually like set you out with a purpose. Whereas King's Quest One was sort of you need to find these treasures, now go. Leisure Suit Larry was okay. Well, before I turn 40, I need to get laid at least once, and
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting to have come across that because I really didn't know exactly what Leisure Suit Larry was about until I played it just a couple years ago, and it's sort of like, oh, that's actually kind of that's it's cool that they had that sort of focus to it, to the story.
Well, the graphics are misleading. You look at the graphics and you think King's Quest 1, Space Quest 1, Police Quest 1, they all came out at the same time, but there's a certain je ne sais quoi to Leisure Suit Larry. It's like that next level. I'm not saying it's better than the other games. It came a little bit ahead, and I think the fact that it was based on another game gave it that little extra hit up. Even
Mm.
though it was raunchy, that doesn't remove from its writing and humor and music and
Hmm.
graphics.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So you you have a couple kids, two or three, or how many kids do you have?
Three of them, yeah.
Three of them. I always forget. Everyone, when you get to the point where everyone has kids, I kind of forget who has how many. And they're all how old's the youngest?
The youngest is just turning 9 in September.
Is he playing Leisure Suit Larry?
He's not super interested in Leisure Suit Larry. Even when I'm playing it, he'll look over because, it's bright and it's sexy and it's funny. But I often have the speech turned off, so he's doing his own thing.
Right.
He's more interested in Quest for Glory 5 right now. His older brother has been doing speed runs, so.
Oh, great. So he is being raised the Sierra style.
Oh, of course, because
Yeah.
they see me playing it and I make it enticing. They think it's actually, I don't know why my kids think I'm cool. And even as they're teenagers and in their 20s, they're still like, hey, mom, why don't you tell me more about that Sierra game? And I appreciate it.
That's cool because that's actually that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. It's sort of like, when you have kids, um, and your kids range from pretty young to, I think, young adult at this point. And, obviously time goes on and video games just keep getting more and more and more advanced. They advance faster than I'm pretty sure they advance faster than any other real entertainment media, given the how relatively young it is. So I'm just always kind of interested to know, do kids have the desire to go back and play what is actually quite relatively primitive by now, compared to you get like the Horizon Zero Dawn or something these days, or just like super polished, like super realistic, just action packed, just depth of gameplay, and just like such an awesome game. And then you go back to like 5 pixels trying to bang 6 pixels because that one has 1 pixel for boobs. So basically, what my question is in short form is, do kids go back and play? How do they enjoy going back to play these old, like, pioneering games?
It's strategic. I like to play it. I like to have them watch me play it. When my older kids were younger, I would say you're not allowed any video games or TV unless you play Quest for Glory 1 EGA. I'm not joking. And it worked. All of the kids played it because back then I had limits on that stuff. The newest kid, he's intrigued because I think he thinks us gamers are cool because we talk about YouTube personalities and I talk about games that are new as well as games that are old and games that are independent and I think what we are a part of, the Classic Gamers Guild, that's a big part of what we are. We are classic gamers. We're not
Hmm.
just talking about classic games. It's all connected because Leisure Suit Larry influenced games that we're playing today that started the road to people drawing maps or learning how to get a taxi.
Started the road to Mass Effect.
Yeah, which led you to Mass Effect too. I mean,
And how was I mean, I don't want this to sound in any way demeaning or anything, but just being the time I remember in the '80s growing up, and video games were very much looked at as like the boys' toys, like that's like what they play, and the girls aren't supposed to like the video games. That's kind of like maybe that's just sort of where I was, but that was very much the mentality of it. Like, this is what boys do. I know girls who claim to have played games back when I was in elementary school, and they got, funny enough, it's not like very much has changed. But, you get all the boys saying like, no, you don't play games and all that kind of thing. And, oh man, really nothing's changed in that regard. That's depressing. Um,
the more things change, the more they stay the same. I tell you what.
yeah, good man. As soon as I said that, I just suddenly realized how that still happens today. Um, how was it like? Like, did you have a lot of gamer friends? Did you make a lot of friends with the guys as a result? Or, what was it like growing up as a kid in the '80s as a female gamer?
It was a lot of bringing friends over and saying, here, why don't you watch me play this game? It's called King's Quest. It's super cool. I'm in the cave right now. So I'm just kind of walking around on this amber monochrome screen. No, no,
Mhm.
shh, just watch. And I'm going to find my way through without this guy killing me. Now, I'm going to teach you how to spell chasm. That's right. You don't even know what it is, do you? Ha, do you even know what a uvula is? Yeah. No, my friends were not into that at all. None of
No.
them. boys or girls. I met one in grade 8. He lent me Willie Beamish. Thank you, Ben. You're awesome. But that's about it.
You've gamed pretty consistently over the years since then. Like once you started, you kind of kept going, I assume. Uh, the only reason I ask this is because I've had lulls where I've got like totally just dropped off and not gamed for certain periods of time. So you were pretty consistently gaming all the way through life.
Yeah, I mean, I do jump onto consoles here and there. I'm not PC exclusive by
Hmm.
any means. I mean, Nintendo's, PlayStations, I still have all my classic consoles, but I also have a classic computer so I can run some of the older games. So you get the best of all the worlds, really. And I mean, there's so many activities to do with the family and things to talk about when it comes
Hmm.
to video games of any system.
I totally was going to go somewhere with that line of questioning, and I totally forgot where I was going to go. So did you? I think pretty much all of the games, like the first in the series of most of their signature series, have been remade into VGA games. So did you go back and play Leisure Suit Larry 1 when it was remade into VGA?
I remember being really excited about it. I got given Leisure Suit Larry VGA a little bit late in the game, but also Police Quest, the VGA remake, at about the same time. And
Mhm.
I didn't really get anywhere with the Police Quest VGA remake. I just, I tried, but the spirit was different and the controls were not what I was looking for at the time.
Did you play
And
Police Quest
Larry,
1? Did you play Police Quest 1, the original, before the VGA version?
oh gosh, yes. Yeah, Police Quest was another one of those lucky games that landed in my lap and changed my life because it made me interested in guns and
Hmm.
police procedurals, and I love paperwork and researching. Yeah, those games are just fun. So yeah, by the time VGA came out, I was intrigued to play it because I wanted to know what I wasn't asking. And this is what I used VGA versions for. It was, what questions am I missing? Where am I not getting points in the EGA version? Because it's showing you, it's kind of laying it out like a map and saying you can ask all of these questions, and if you ask all of these questions, you have access to all of these questions, and there's points if you follow that conversation tree to the correct place. And then you take that and you write down stuff that's interesting, and then you can go back and play EGA and find out if you get a different response.
So VGA is basically a guide to playing EGA better.
It's like a hint book kind of for games I never got a hint book for, you know. But Freddy Farkas, I needed a real hint book because of prescriptions and stuff, but
Mhm.
you know, not those other games.
Was there a lot of difference between Leisure Suit Larry 1, EGA, and
It was
VGA?
more round, and it it still seemed dirty in a satisfying way to me. It was great to see everything with a little bit more clarity. I still find the EGA sexier, but the VGA visually intriguing, and I really appreciate hand drawn art and other things that they did. The voices were interesting. I always listen to the voice at least once when I
Mhm.
play a game, just to get the mood of who they want the characters to now be and to represent, because it's different when you don't have a voice. You represent what they sound like in your own head.
Right. I was actually that was actually something I was going to also kind of ask because I wasn't sure your perspective versus mine, but I actually really did like the character portraits in the EGA considerably over the VGA, even though the VGA was technically better graphics. The
They weren't as sexy, man. They
they
were not as sexy.
right
They
they
just weren't.
weren't. They just there was something. There's just such a cool factor I find in AGI to begin with, and it just I think it's sort of subconscious when you see something that kind of you can use a bit more of the imagination to fill in the blanks, and all you need is just sort of the just the idea, and you see like the hey she's really pretty, and you can just kind of go with that. Whereas when VJ sort of says this is what she looks like, it's like well okay.
Yeah, you can be more critical on it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, you're like, you're telling me that's pretty now, and I have to believe you. But with EGA, you're like, oh man, I can imagine how hot she is.
It's amazing the mind trick too, because I think I had a conversation with you about this not too long ago about how the I think I showed you graphics specifically from Leisure Suit Larry, and I kind of it turns out that the skin tone between the different characters, because it's EGA, it was the same actual color, but our
That's right. Rosella and
brains.
Larry are both the same color.
That was it. Yes, it was like Rosella. Was it Rosella? Yeah, I think it was Rosella and Eve, I believe. Were
Yeah.
both the same colored of skin tone, even though you think of Rosella as more fair and you think of Eve as more tan. We were both surprised by the fact that it was actually the exact same color.
I always pictured Rosella as being very fair, I think because she was a princess.
Hmm.
And even though she's spending all her time out on an island, swimming in the ocean, she would be tan, of course, just as tan as a woman in a hot tub with a glass of champagne. It makes perfect sense.
Hmm. I think the hair color probably does something too. I think when you see blonde, you just kind of assume a more fair skin. When you see a brunette, you
Mm.
kind of probably assume slightly more tan. And then you get like a game like Enclosure, where if you're Asian, you get canary yellow. But I'm not going to harp
Oh,
on that
so
one too
yellow.
long. But
It was good of you to play it, man, and it made for a great podcast episode. If nobody's listened to it, go back, listen to it, because now you can see what he's talking about if you haven't played it before.
oh well, thank you for that, for plugging me, so I don't have to. Um, so I guess what I got you here is to tell us about Ladies' Night at the Classic Gamers Guild.
In the Classic Gamers Guild, where I'm an admin, we have a few hangout zones. Friday night is ladies' night, and it's a place where we hang out, talk about video games for a couple of hours, play Mad Libs. We always have a contest and we give away games. Last week we did the death generator where you make up different ways for Sierra characters to die, so it ties in nicely with classic games. It's super popular. It's been going for over a year now. I've been hosting the Mad Libs for it'll be a year at the end of this August. And if you don't know what Mad Libs is, because you don't remember being in high school, you take a story and you remove important words, nouns, verbs, adjectives, people, and then you ask people to replace them with nouns, verbs, adjectives that are in no way related to the text that you're filling in. My text usually being instruction books from classic games. So they throw out the answers. I assemble it into something that actually starts to make sense again as long as you don't mind the context being not included. And then we post it up and we laugh at it. It's for no prizes. It's just for fun. Sometimes we do caption this where you get to look at a picture and think of something funny to say. Usually it's from a classic game like King's Quest 3 or Garfield and Friends. I don't think that there is any other place on Facebook dedicated to games, specifically classic and independent games, if you were to narrow it down, where they gather just as ladies to talk and make fun of and post pictures of that sort of thing. It's a really unique experience that you don't get if you don't have a female only environment.
Hmm. So what is have you played through the entire Leisure Suit Larry series basically, except for the fourth one?
Oh, you know what? I've totally played the fourth one, and nobody can say that I haven't, because have you seen the first half of Codename Iceman? I mean, up until you
Yes,
get in that
that's
submarine, you could swear you were playing Leisure Suit Larry 4, but they ran out of time and they're like, no, we got to release the submarine title, mash this into here, and Leisure Suit Larry 4 can become an in joke. We're good with that.
that is so funny because that is literally the only part of Codename Iceman that I know, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's kind of
It's the
true.
good part. It totally is. I love Leisure Suit Larry 5 now, but when I first played it, I was a little bit disappointed because really I was expecting a game in the style of number 3. They had left it off, and I was kind of cruising in that vein, and it took me a while to forgive 5, but by the time
Hmm.
number 6 came out, I was entirely okay with the concept. And then number 7 came out and gave me that text parser back in a way that only Starship Titanic had done. Uh, I
Mm,
don't know which one of those came first. If you guys know, feel free to let me know. But the order I played things in is not always the order things were released in.
right. Yeah, no,
But
that's totally.
as soon as you can rattle your zipper on things, and you can type what you want to do and how you want to do it, and you don't have to entirely rely on the mouse. It brings back a bit of the charm. Now, I know people are hard on Leisure Suit Larry 7, but it was fun. It had a fun story, and a lot of thought and time and development went into it, and those animations were pretty damn sexy for later animations of that time period.
Mm. What was your favorite in the series?
Uh, my favorite would have to be now, my cop out answer is all of them in the order that they were released, which is the order that I played them. Because, if I didn't play them in order, I would have thought of them differently.
Right.
But okay, for real, I would have to say number 1. It set the precedence because as soon as you're going into bed with a lady and you decide what to do and you get it right. I mean, as soon as you access that room, as soon as you accidentally flush the toilet, you know that you're into the next realm of gaming. Even the death scenes, they really took a lot of thought. When you die, for example, in Leisure Suit Larry EGA, you fall underneath the game into the cavern and you run into Sir Graham and the dragon from King's Quest 2. I think there's a bunch of people in white coats, and one of them is Roberta Williams. That kind of an in joke. I mean, yeah, you died and you're kind of mad about it, but at the same time, you get this scene and you're like, okay, I'll just try again.
That was pretty amazing because I, all those AGI games, especially when you die, you get like a dialogue box that just says you died, and then another one that says like you can what was it, restore, restart, or quit. So it was funny because like only playing Leisure Suit Larry 1 for the first time a couple years ago, I was totally not expecting that you get like an elaborate death sequence every single time you die, where they like you.
You wander into an alleyway and it just happens.
Yeah. And then you get pulled into this room where they like manufacture Sierra characters and they make a new Leisure Suit Larry and they put they throw you back up into the beginning of the game again. And it's just like what I did they did that back then?
Well, all of that game was really meant to be a satire against chauvinism. I mean, if you look at the way Larry was written and how the women were written, it is not sexist and chauvinistic. It's a learning experience for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Because that's still one of the very debated topic that I've seen a lot in conversation on Facebook groups is whether or not Leisure Suit Larry was misogynist. Do you have any sort of like what do you think in terms of like do you consider them to be sort of misogynist games?
Whew, that is a loaded topic. And to me, they really are coming of age games, and sex and having good and bad experiences and marriages. I mean, it doesn't have to happen at any particular age. It might start when you're 15, it might start when you're 38, like Larry, but the good has to go with the bad, and everybody has to learn somehow. Not everybody was nice to him. I saw him going around being quite nice to a lot of other people. He was running around picking things up and dropping things off for ladies that were just sitting there doing their nails for hours. So this guy was trying really hard. He just went for the wrong kind of woman for him, and I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yes. Yeah. I think everyone kind of relates to that, or at least everyone should.
I don't feel corrupted by it. If anything, I feel enhanced by seeing both sides of the story. Play Leisure Suit Larry 3. You see it from Larry's point of view, you see it from Patty's point of view. Uh, it can't be sexist when it's represented in that way.
Hmm. It's that's another thing. Is number three, I think, is the only other one that I've actually played to completion. Granted, this is the one that I played quite a few years ago, so I don't really remember too much about it. But I think um I think this is one of the first games I can think of in terms of like earliest where you actually played the woman trying to find a good enough man, and on and the same in the same game on the same like flip side of the coin. I think this is like the time when uh I never played all the way through Leisure Suit Larry 2, but this is the time where I saw Leisure Suit Larry actually try to be a good enough person to deserve somebody like Patty. I thought that was kind of subversive because I'd always thought Leisure Suit Larry was just like this kind of like a perverted game where you try to go around, screwing chicks, and then it's like, oh no, you actually have to earn a good woman in this one.
Well, and I think he went through in his 30s what a lot of people went through when they were younger. His mom coddled him. He simply didn't know, and he had to make those kinds of mistakes. And by the time Leisure Suit Larry 3 rolled around, he'd learned some pretty hard lessons.
Hmm. I think that one started with his. I think he must have gotten married by the end of the second one because I think he got divorced
He
at the
did.
beginning of the third one.
He's out mowing his lawn, yeah.
Oh, actually, no, that's because I did play the beginning of Leisure Suit Larry 2, and that was actually like the funniest part. Is the game starts with you mowing the lawn with Leisure Suit Larry, I should say, mowing the lawn of the woman
That's
that he
right.
met at the end of Leisure Suit
Because
Larry
number
1.
3, you start on the beach.
That's right. And Leisure Suit Larry 2 starts with you mowing the lawn of the woman that you met at the at the end of the first game, and she pulls into the driveway in her car. She's like, "What? Who the hell are you?" And you're like, yeah, I met you the other day and I moved in." It's just like, get out of
You're
here.
like, is he delusional or is she just a bitch? I don't know, but it's funny.
Yeah. And it turns out to be her dog from the first one.
Yeah, I love the connection. See, those are those lines that make these games a cut above. That it's
Hmm.
the multi-level humor that doesn't disrespect puns, it encourages them.
Yes, yeah, it absolutely does. It turns puns into an art form that a lot of people they kind of people go for the low hanging fruit and just sort of dad joke. There's a difference I find between a really good pun and a dad joke, and a really good pun is just a work of art.
It is. It makes you groan and shake your head and sigh and smile and maybe even walk around in a circle. That's a good pun.
Yes. Um, as we wrap up this episode, is there any last words you would like to put out there for the world to hear?
Play games that make you think, whether it's Leisure Suit Larry 1 or Leisure Suit Larry 7 or Leisure Suit Larry 5.
Or Leisure Suit
Play a
Larry
game that
4?
has well, and you know what? If you can
Oh.
get a hold of Leisure Suit Larry 4, give me a call. I got a space up on my shelf that has a gap right now.
Oh, actually, just while I have you here, I have to ask you, since you know quite a bit more about the series than I do. Is, what's with Leisure Suit Larry 4? Why is there no Leisure Suit Larry 4? At least not officially. Other than
Well,
codename Iceman, but why is there no Leisure Suit Larry 4?
from the last I heard from Al, it didn't go through because he got sidetracked. He was doing a few other projects. He was working on some development projects, some other software projects, and he got caught in a lag. He didn't want to move forward. He couldn't move forward, but he had a timeline to keep. And, he didn't continue Larry 4 so much as he just didn't start it. He put it aside and worked on a team and created Leisure Suit Larry 5 and decided on purpose to make Leisure Suit Larry 4 an in joke.
Of course you would.
You wait long enough and at some point you're like, man, this project is dead in the water. It hasn't even started and it's already over. And sometimes it's better to just move right
Yeah.
along.
Um, you were there with me when we actually met Al Lowe in person, and he's just one hell of a guy. He's just like one of the just funniest, naturally just kindest people that I've ever met.
It was a great time. He was good to talk with.
Any last words before we close out?
It's always really great to talk to you. We mentioned before that Rick used to be from Vancouver, BC, but he's moved all the way across Canada to Ottawa. So, although he is not as close of a neighbor anymore, when we can get together and chat with everybody, it makes us feel like we're just right next door. So, I really appreciate you having me on.
I am very flattered to be considered your neighbor for reasons I will not go into right now. But the feeling is mutual. Let's not go into. I always enjoy chatting with you, and thank you so much for coming onto the show. It was great to chat with you as always.
Thanks a lot, Rick. Have a nice night.
You as well. And one last piece of advice: do not do a murder.
Don't do murder, folks.